Imagine you are facing a military leader who is both talented at fighting like a genius and knows how to treat enemies like valuable friends. No, this is not a character from a fictional novel. It is Saladin, a man who made all of Europe both respectful and wary. But hey, don't let his historical grandeur fool you, because Saladin's story is not just about battle, but also about how a man transformed from a political player into an icon of humanity. Is he a saint on the battlefield, or just a skillful politician who knows how to promote himself? Let's explore. Welcome to Faces of History. Here we uncover fascinating stories from the past and dive into the lives of legendary figures who shaped the course of world history. If you're passionate about history and the incredible journeys of those who made it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. Let's embark on this inspiring journey through time together. The life and rise of Saladin. Saladin, also known as Salah ad-Din, did not wear a crown and ride majestically to lead the army from a young age. Actually, he was born in 1137 or 1138, because at that time no one had time to take careful notes like now, in Tikrit, a small land in present-day Iraq. His family was Kurdish, and his parents could not have imagined that their young son would one day become someone who made the whole of Europe tremble, both literally and figuratively. Childhood, not like a Marvel superhero. Imagine a young Saladin, no magic, no sword swinging to destroy enemies from a young age. He grew up in a military family, was educated in the spirit of Islam, and early learned how to read the Quran. But the interesting thing is, in his youth, he was not very interested in war or politics. To put it bluntly, Saladin at that time probably preferred reading books to fighting. However, this did not last long. When he entered the adult world, no one gave him a choice. He began working under Nur ad-Din, a famous Muslim leader. And guess what? Saladin quickly proves that even though he is not a big fan of battle, he is actually better than many people who like to fight but don't know how to win. From ordinary soldier to great leader, Saladin did not just sit still and wait for the right time. With natural talent and maybe a little luck, he quickly rose to prominence. After Nur ad-Din's death, the situation in the Muslim world became chaotic. Everyone wanted to sit in the seat of power, but Saladin did something different. Instead of fighting with everyone, he skillfully used both intelligence and strength to unify the factions. He built a strong empire centered on Egypt and Syria. And here's the remarkable point. While other leaders just wanted to gain power, Saladin had a bigger vision. He not only wanted to unite the Muslim world, but also wanted to take back Jerusalem, the sacred symbol occupied by the Crusaders. The story of a politician with master PR skills. Saladin was not only good on the battlefield, he was also an extremely intelligent political player. He understood that he could not rely solely on force to achieve his goals, but needed support from both the people and the elites. Therefore, Saladin always maintained his image as an honest, generous, and benevolent leader, an image that even his enemies could not hate. So from an ordinary boy in Tikrit, Saladin became one of the greatest leaders in history. But let's be honest, do you think such a perfect person really exists? Or does he simply know how to make himself look great in public? Let this story continue to unfold. Historical context and challenges. Let's go back in time to the 12th century, where the Middle East was experiencing an explosion, not of technology startups, but of fierce wars between factions, both within and outside the region. This was the period of the Crusades, when Europe decided to send troops to liberate the Holy Land of Jerusalem, but not by peace or negotiation. That's right, the way they chose was to pick up your sword and go. Fight for the Holy Land or play big for fame? For European nations, the Crusades were not just about faith. This is also an opportunity for kings and knights to polish their names, take over more land, and, who knows, perhaps even a way to solve the problem of surplus unemployed nobles. They see Jerusalem as a great prize, but forget that the Muslim world is not a derelict playground for them to do whatever they want. Internal problems of the Muslim world. While the Crusaders were busy occupying the Holy Land, the Muslim world had a bigger problem: internal divisions. Instead of uniting to fight a common enemy, Muslim kingdoms and emirates are fighting each other to the death. Leaders in Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia are constantly jostling for power, making regional unification a distant dream. In other words, the Middle East at that time was like a chaotic wedding party where everyone argued over who would sit in the front seat, forgetting that the uninvited guests, the Crusaders, had taken over everything. Saladin's challenge. This is the context in which Saladin appeared. To realize his goal, to recapture Jerusalem, he faced two major challenges: unifying Muslim factions. This is as difficult a task as teaching a crowded kindergarten class without a teaching assistant. Saladin could not just use force, but had to skillfully persuade, build alliances, and sometimes humble himself to rally everyone to one side. Confronting the Crusaders. Not just fighting, but fighting an army funded by rich and ambitious European nations. This is like having to play a soccer match where the other team has all of the exceptional players. One-on-two scenario. Saladin not only had to contend with powerful Crusader armies from the West, but also had to overcome suspicion from his own allies. In the Muslim world at that time, he had to face people who were always ready to stab him in the back if he was negligent. However, he proved that not only weapons, but also intelligence and leadership are formidable tools, an era of both opportunity and danger. The historical context in which Saladin lived is not a simple game. It's a giant chessboard where every move can lead to glory or disaster. But what makes Saladin different is that he knows how to turn challenges into opportunities, while maintaining an image of both skillfulness and strength that no one can deny. So Saladin's story is not just about war or politics. It is also a lesson on how to maintain ideals. Military leadership and strategy. When talking about Saladin, we cannot ignore his outstanding military leadership talent. But don't imagine him like a Hollywood action movie general, riding a horse into battle, slashing and shouting, "Fight for ideals." In fact, Saladin had a leadership style that was both practical and sharp, with a strategy that made his enemies sweat, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of admiration. Battle of Hattin. How to perfectly roast the enemy army. One of Saladin's most famous victories was the Battle of Hattin in 1187, where he defeated the Crusaders and reclaimed Jerusalem. But what is worth mentioning is how he achieved this victory. Instead of attacking directly, he used a strategy so clever that today people call it the art of war, fire and thirst trap. Saladin deliberately lured the Crusaders, accustomed to living in the pleasant climate of Europe, into the middle of an arid desert. He even built a few more bonfires to increase the pan of fire feeling for the enemy. Result? The Crusaders were exhausted before they could fight. Psychological tactics. Not only good on the battlefield, Saladin is also good at psychological combat. He took advantage of the Crusaders' low morale to attack fiercely, creating the impression that defeat was inevitable. The resulting Battle of Hattin was not only a major military victory, but also a blow to the morale of the Crusaders. Not only knowing how to fight, but also knowing how to persuade. One of Saladin's admirable qualities is his ability to fight not only with weapons, but also with ingenuity and flexible strategy. When necessary, he is willing to negotiate with enemies to achieve long-term benefits. Treaty of Ramla. After many battles with Richard the Lionheart during the Third Crusade, Saladin not only held Jerusalem, but also signed a peace treaty, allowing Christians to make pilgrimages to the Holy Land. In other words, he gave them a visit ticket without losing land. Strategy of internal unity. While Europe was often divided by internal conflicts, Saladin knew that true strength comes from unity. He not only fought to defeat external enemies, but also quelled internal rebellions, keeping his kingdom stable. Mercy towards enemies, PR in the Middle Ages. Another highlight of Saladin's military leadership is that he never completely crushed his opponents. After the Battle of Hattin, instead of mass executions, he spared the lives of many prisoners and only asked them to pay a ransom. This caused even European historians who disliked Saladin to admit that he was a humane leader. But wait, is it really benevolent, or is it just a masterful PR strategy? Whatever the answer, the truth is that Saladin's image has become almost impossible to blacken in the eyes of both friend and foe. Long-term strategy, one step back, three steps forward. Saladin is not a person who likes to fight quickly and win quickly. He understood that it is not always necessary to win every battle immediately. There were times when he intentionally withdrew to preserve his forces, waiting for an opportunity to counterattack. This is not weakness, but a very wise strategy. For example, in his confrontations with Richard the Lionheart, Saladin did not seek to completely defeat his opponent because he knew that could cause great losses. Instead, he maintained a balance, just enough to protect Jerusalem while exhausting his opponents without being able to advance further. A comprehensive military leader. Saladin was not only a general good at fighting, but also a leader who knew how to combine military strength, diplomatic strategy, and benevolence to build image and power. Whether you admire or doubt his goodness, there's no denying that Saladin was one of the greatest military leaders in history, and the lessons from him are still relevant today. Relationship with Richard the Lionheart. Enemy or soulmate on the battlefield? If Saladin is the marshal of the Islamic world, then Richard the Lionheart, Richard the Mer of England, is the action star of the Crusades. These two characters meet in one of history's most memorable confrontations, but their relationship is so complicated that it makes people wonder, are they enemies or reluctant friends? Confrontation scene, when two superstars meet. The story begins when Richard leads the Third Crusade to the Middle East with a noble or paranoid goal to recapture Jerusalem from Saladin. And guess what? Richard was no mean feat. He was an excellent strategist, a fearless warrior, and perhaps one of the leaders who caused Saladin the most headaches. Both are two sides of the same coin. Both have extraordinary military talent, both have a high spirit of determination, and both know how to play PR games with the world. Classic battle. Respect each other through each attack. Saladin and Richard faced off in many fierce battles, but the most notable was the Battle of Arsuf, 1181. Richard won the battle, but instead of embarrassing Saladin, he only made the Muslim leader even more admired. Richard used excellent tactics, leading his army with extraordinary courage, while Saladin held his ground after the defeat. The interesting thing is that, despite fighting to the death, the two have a rare respect for each other. Richard once praised Saladin as one of the noblest enemies, and Saladin, on the contrary, saw Richard as a true warrior, worth fighting. Moments full of love and affection. Even though they are rivals, their relationship is sometimes quite cute. Richard was sick. Saladin sent medicine. In a moment full of humanity, when Richard was sick on the battlefield, Saladin did not take advantage of this opportunity. Instead, he sent medicine and even gave him fruit to help the English king recover quickly. It's literally fair play. Richard lost his horse. Saladin gave him a horse. During a battle when Richard lost his horse, Saladin immediately ordered his opponent to be sent a new horse. This action not only demonstrated Saladin's gentlemanly style, but also made future generations remember the martial spirit between the two leaders. Treaty of Ramla, agreement of people who understand each other. After many inconclusive battles, Saladin and Richard decided to end the conflict with the Treaty of Ramla in 1192. According to this agreement, Jerusalem remained under Saladin's control. Christians were allowed to make pilgrimages to Jerusalem without danger. Both sides kept the captured territories intact. This treaty did not bring absolute victory to either side, but it was a testament to the intelligence and practicality of both Saladin and Richard. They understand that peace is sometimes more important than continuing to fight to the end, a relationship rarely seen in history. Saladin and Richard are proof that confrontation does not have to be accompanied by hatred. Both respected each other's talents, did not hesitate to show mercy even in war, and ultimately left a legacy of martial spirit that future generations admired. But don't let these reluctant friendship moments fool you. Both are astute leaders, always putting their own and their people's interests first. This mutual admiration is like two opponents on the football field, respecting each other, but still playing hard to win. Saladin's political achievements and influence, a versatile leader. Saladin was not only an excellent warrior on the battlefield, but also a talented politician, the type of person who could brandish a sword and sign treaties while still making both friends and enemies nod in admiration. Here are his political achievements and influence. encapsulated in an incisive and easy-to-understand style. 1. Unifying the Muslim world. A miracle or the work of a super diplomat. Before Saladin, the Muslim world was nothing more than a chaotic wedding party. Leaders compete for power, kingdoms fight constantly. Saladin made the impossible possible, uniting Muslim factions from Egypt to Syria, even Mesopotamia. How Saladin did it: instead of using only force, he skillfully combined negotiations, building alliances, and, when necessary, did not hesitate to use force to completely solve the problem. Think of him as a chess player, always several moves ahead of his opponent. The result? Saladin not only created a powerful empire, but also brought stability to the region, something that had previously seemed like a distant dream. 2. Recapture of Jerusalem. Saladin's greatest success. If you remember only one thing about Saladin, it must be his exploits in 1187 when he reclaimed Jerusalem from the Crusaders. But what is special here is not only the victory, but also the way he treated the city and its residents. No massacre, no looting, in stark contrast to the way the Crusaders treated Jerusalem when they captured the city in 1099. Saladin showed mercy. He allowed the Christians to leave safely, even helping them by arranging for the ransom of prisoners. Image of an ideal leader. This act cemented Saladin's image in history as a leader who was both strong and benevolent, someone who knew how to win without causing hatred. 3. Build and consolidate the Ayyubid Empire. Saladin was not only a military king, but also a good administrator. He spent much time consolidating power and developing infrastructure, education, and religion in the Ayyubid Empire. Great constructions. Saladin built many important buildings, including fortresses and mosques. These works were not only defensive, but also demonstrated the cultural and religious development of the empire. Development of education and religion. Saladin invested in building schools and religious facilities, contributing to raising people's intellectual level and strengthening the Islamic faith in his empire. 4. Timeless influence. Legend or legacy. Although he has been dead for more than 800 years, Saladin is still one of the most influential historical figures. He is not only a symbol of courage and kindness, but also an inspiration for many future generations of leaders. In the Muslim world, Saladin is celebrated as an ideal leader who protected the Holy Land and brought unity to the region. He is a symbol of solidarity and political dexterity. In Western eyes, even though he was an opponent of the Crusades, Saladin was still respected for his nobility and martial spirit. Many European historians even praised him as an ideal monarch of his time. In popular culture, Saladin's image appears in many books, films, and documentaries, from ancient epics to modern video games. He is proof that a true leader can transcend the boundaries of time and culture. Although Saladin is praised as benevolent and noble, it cannot be denied that he is also very skillful in building an image. Think about it. How can a leader win continuously and make the whole world, including his enemies, respect him? Perhaps Saladin was not only an excellent strategist on the battlefield, but also a master of communication in the Middle Ages. Saladin not only left a military legacy, but was also an excellent politician, knowing how to reconcile power with benevolence. He is one of the few historical figures who could win on the battlefield without losing the hearts of others, whether friends, enemies, or descendants. And that, perhaps, was his greatest achievement. Saladin, a name not only engraved in history books, but also resonates through time as a symbol of nobility, benevolence, and leadership talent. He is not only an outstanding warrior and intelligent politician, but also a living proof that, even in the most chaotic times, a person can choose the path of solidarity and humanity. Today's world may be a far cry from Saladin's time, but the lessons from his life remain just as valid. How to uphold ideals, face challenges, and above all, be human, both in victory and defeat. If you admire Saladin, leave a comment about what you learned from his story. And don't forget, history is not just dry pages. It is where we find inspiration to write our own stories. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring historical stories. Hello, and see you in the next video.